Merkel Media.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Well, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Daylight NBC.
Jack Marius Tack Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Mumbai Kutafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles and Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you are watching us on Rockfin, Odyssey, Band.video, Vigilante.tv, or you're listening wherever podcasts are served, thanks a million. We appreciate the support. You can follow me on Twitter at Macroaggressions and on Instagram at Macroaggressions Podcast. The website is the octopus of globalcontrol.com. Big thank you to our sponsors. They make the show happen. Legal Shield has been in business for half a century. In Canada and the United States, they have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and they get us access to high-powered attorneys in your area for a very reasonable price, $30 a month, $1 a day. We'll get you an attorney that can take care of all your legal paperwork for you, get you that last will and testament, financial power of attorney, medical directive. You can knock all that stuff out. Then in the future, if you have issues with speeding tickets, red light camera tickets, any of that stuff. You just need a lawyer to take a look at some paperwork that you've got. You've got it. You've got access to it. Send it over to your attorney. I tell you what, the best place to go to find out more about this is the website that they built specifically for us. You can go to www.don'tgetpushedaround.com. Read up all about it. There's plenty of information there. You'll find everything that you need to get yourself sorted out. And also, big thanks to EMP Shield. They are building the best EMP protecting device out there. So well built that the U.S. military wanted to ask them, hey, how you guys doing this? So I'll tell you what, go to EMP Shield, read up about it. You'd be fascinated. They've got devices that'll work on your house, on your cars, on your motorhome if you have one, or a boat if you have, or a generator. All of those things work. They're bundle packages. You can install it yourself if you're handy. They've got installation videos even on their website, but otherwise you can just have an electrician come over to your house, install it. There's only 4 wires. It installs like a type 2 surge protector. So do this. Go to empshield.com, read up about it, see what you think. If you find something you like, use the promo code MACRO on your way out. That will definitely save you a bit of money, and we certainly could use all the help that we can get. Well, I'll tell you, I had so much fun. I had too much fun at the American Liberty Awards in Austin, Texas in August, and had a great time. We got a chance to see a bunch of presenters, performers, musicians. We got to hear from Bryson Gray, Nick Natelli, Chrissy Mayer was there doing comedy. Lila Hart was doing comedy. But afterwards, Tony Arterburn and I had a chance to mingle and do a little schmoozing after the event was over. And it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Brad Skistimas. You might know him better though. 5 times August. Hey, Brad, how are you? Good to see you again.
Yeah. Hey, Charlie. How you doing?
Well, it was so much fun to see you perform at the event. Talk about like a perfect audience. You know what I mean? You probably don't get too many of those audiences when you just take a look out and you go, "Oh, these are my people right here." I mean, it was a great event. It was good. It was good to see you.
Yeah.
Boy, is this your time? I mean, it feels like, and I don't want to jinx anybody here, but like it feels like this. There's a whipsaw effect. We've gone fully woke. We've got Doja Cat satanic stuff. We've got Lil Nas X. We've got Sam Smith. We've got all the Hollywood morons going hardcore Satanism. And then we've got this other segment of entertainers and musicians like you. We've got, Pete Parada from The Offspring speaking out. We have Michael Graves, who was there. He performed and of course, Richmond, north of Richmond. It seems like a pivot. It feels like things are turning. Are you getting the sense that there is a huge appetite out there for people that are actually making music and talking about the things that are actually important?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that we're at that pivotal moment now because, I started speaking out through my music early 2021. And it was a decision where if you were making that decision then, it wasn't a safe decision if you're in entertainment to speak out and say those things. So, I released a song called God Help Us All. And I thought that would be sort of my one say on what was happening in the world, and I'd sort of let it be. And, just to sort of vent and get it out there, speak up a little bit. And because I was thinking about my kids and the future and the way everything was like just the world that was in front of me. And so I wrote this song and I put it out there and I was like, I know I'm going to upset some people with this. I've been creating music for 20 years at that point. As 5 Times August, I started when I was 18. So I had a long, couple of decades behind me of just of history with fans and certain people. And I put this song out there and instantly a big chunk of them just sort of fell off. They were mad at me for saying what I was saying. But then I started getting, little by little, more and more these emails and messages from new people that had never heard of me before, actually starting to find that song, and they were sending me just messages of thanks. And it was really encouraging to me because I didn't know who would really agree with me, about what I was saying. I felt really alone. So this new crop of people discovering me let me know I wasn't alone, and I felt like I needed to write more songs to let these people know they weren't alone. So that was sort of set me on this trajectory of speaking up and becoming sort of this protest artist that I never anticipated myself being. But to go from there to where we are now is very rewarding because you are feeling that shift and you are seeing it happen. I mean, I mentioned this whenever we were at the American Liberty Awards, but like within a matter of the last couple months, I was at an award show for our movement, and I was at a red carpet film premiere for the Plandemic 3 film, which was incredible. And I went to a 3-day music festival in the UK that was all freedom music. And so to see this cultural shift happening in front of us, like it's very exciting and gives me a lot of confidence and hope for the future because it's actually starting to happen. We're seeing the changes in front of us, the cultural shift. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because if I wrote a business plan how I was going to do this podcast when I started it in March of 2020, man, I'd be so far away from what I mean, there's no sort of planning of this. And I've watched you on Twitter before I met you. I watched you on Twitter start to grow and grow and grow. And I was like, oh, this is great, man. This feels organic in a world where nothing really feels organic. It feels like this message is the important part. This music is the important part. And we've always known this. I mean, we know about, the protest singers, like you mentioned it back in the day, whether it's Four Dead in Ohio, Crosby, Stills and Nash, or you're talking about Bob Dylan, or you're talking about people that were anti-war. I remember when musicians used to be anti-war and that was edgy.
Yeah.
Now they're pro-war. Now they're pro-vaccine. How many of your heroes did you lose over the last couple of years? Because I got a buddy, you might have met him. I don't know if he was there in the UK, but a guy named Mark Devlin who does a show. He's a DJ, and he did a presentation in 2019 at Anarchapulco. We were all speakers there, but when I got done speaking, I sat in the audience with a bunch of guys, Ole Damagard and some guys, and we watched Mark Devlin's presentation, No More Heroes was what it was called. And he broke down all of these artists, musicians too, that had been involved in some of like they had like real nefarious ties that you didn't know about. And that was my first entry into like, oh, musicians sometimes sing about songs, but they're, maybe they're not the right person to relay the message. Maybe there's some control going on. But I wonder, after the last couple of years, Rage Against the Machine, Offspring, we've seen a lot of behavior that is pretty antithetical to rock and roll as far as I'm concerned. What was your biggest disappointment over the last couple of years watching the rock industry just crumble?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because that's where my headspace has been this entire last year. I have a song coming out in the next month called Ain't No Rock and Roll, and it's sort of my response to that. And I just finished the video for it. And it's based on that disappointment and basically the entire industry. I was sitting there going through, so I'm putting these faces in the video and like I'm calling these people out and I'm like making sure that they've done something to piss me off before I, put them in there. But I realized like I can really just put anybody in there because every single one of them, like 99.999% of the industry didn't show up, whether if they didn't speak up, that's one thing. And then if they did speak up, they ended up joining the regime. So like, outside of Eric Clapton and Van Morrison, that was the entire, like everybody else did one of those things. They kept quiet or they spoke up in favor of big pharma or whatever it is, all the tyranny around us. But yeah, it was extremely disappointing to, especially at the beginning, because I'm sitting there sort of looking around thinking like, where is everybody? Where's all my heroes? Like nobody's going to speak up about this. That's one of the reasons why I started speaking out through my music, was because my own heroes weren't doing it. And for me, it was like, I need to write the songs that I feel like I would need to hear, that I would want to hear at this time. And that's what art is supposed to do. It's supposed to be a reflection of this time. And so, yeah, I wrote this song last year called Ain't No Rock and Roll. And I'm really looking forward to putting it out because it's coming out. Actually, it's the first single released through this record label called Based Records. That is a brand new record label looking for freedom-minded, non-woke artists. And so we connected. And I was like, I got a great song to release, under that label. And I'm not, I'm an indie guy. But to get to this point, there's sort of like the anti-label. So yeah. I was like, if I'm going to work with a label at this point, and I got Pete Parada on drums for the track and a bunch of other freedom-minded musicians from Nashville. And so it's great. The energy is all there and stuff, but that'll definitely be my response to the whole situation.
Well, your response also on Twitter has been really fun to watch as well, because you have gone back through the archives, so to speak, over the last couple of years of these guys that have been outspoken in favor of lockdowns, in favor of vaccinations and checking cards to get into shows and things like that. And you have been, I'd say, relatively polite about it in an aggressive way, but polite about it, saying, yeah. Hey, you said this a couple of years ago, kind of bringing up and retweeting one of their old tweets. Hey, you said this a couple of years ago. Do you still stand by this? Would you like to change your story? So you're offering them an opportunity to say anything. To say, yeah, you're right. I got that one wrong. I shouldn't have said that. Has anybody taken you up on that? Has anybody stepped up and said, you're right, man. I stepped on a big fat rake on this one and I shouldn't have done it. And I didn't understand the game and I'd like to change my answer now. Has anybody taken you up on that?
No. Yeah, I've gone through a giant list of artists, and I've reached out, called them out. The only person to personally respond back was Peter Frampton. And I said, I did exactly what you're saying. I said, hey, you said this, have you changed your mind? And he just wrote back something like, no, I haven't, but like, this is the moment. It's like, okay, if you're doubling down now, then you're out, for sure. Moving forward, there's no coming back after this point, especially when you see what's happening right now with them starting to bring back masks and, a new talk of a new vaccine. And like, they're repeating the whole thing again. Yeah. So if this is the turning point where it's like, I'm just leaving them all behind. But the main thing that I was trying to do with a lot of that was, call attention to the vaccine injured, because I work a lot with a group called React 19, who has actually been there to help out the vaccine injured. And, I was really miffed about the No Plan Go campaign with Pink and Questlove and John Legend doing. This was earlier this year. They were doing Pfizer commercials. And so I was tweeting at them and I was saying, hey, do you want to take that Pfizer money and donate it to React 19? And I was trying to shine the spotlight back on React 19 and get that conversation pushed forward a little bit. And I didn't hear back from any of them, but Pink's account and Questlove's account blocked me. So it was like somebody on the other end saw that and, turned away. But that's just so shameful to me, that they would rather just turn a blind eye to what they've taken part in. Then acknowledge it and respond, Yeah. It's sad.
I saw an interesting, I don't know if it was an interview or it was kind of maybe it was a back and forth with, since we mentioned Pete Parada, the drummer of The Offspring that was kicked out for refusing to get vaccinated. He said an interesting thing he said that he had been offered the opportunity to get a fake vaccine card. And that would have allowed him, nobody would have known. Plenty of people had those and plenty of people were using them. It would have allowed him to circumvent this whole thing, allow him to tour and do all this stuff. But he didn't do it.
Yeah.
He didn't do it because he didn't want to even validate the concept of it in any way. And I thought, what an awesome, amazing, ballsy thing to do. Because he's right. He's 100% right. There's part of me, the anarchist part of me, that's like, get the fake facts, go around them, break the system from the inside. And then there's another part that goes, no, I think Pete was right on this one. You just don't even participate at all. Did you ever get tempted? Did people ever come to you and say, hey, we've got, you can get around this stuff. We can get you a fake one here. But it seems like that might have been an offer for a lot of people. I doubt we'll hear too much about who took it and who didn't, unless from the inside. But was that ever something that was that you were approached with?
Not really. I think my wife and I had briefly discussed it, at the very, very beginning when we could see it coming, particularly about our kids or something like that, not knowing what was coming. But, we would have more than likely just pulled our kids out of school or something, which we ended up doing anyway. But no, I think Pete, Pete's an awesome guy, and I think he's got his head on straight about the whole situation. I mean, the thing is, we have to just sort of, especially now, like I said, with everything happening at this point, you just move forward pretending like it doesn't even exist, because acknowledging it before even, like put us in that situation and stuff. But yeah, we'll never know who took it. And that's an interesting thing, because they'll sort of eke their way back into, I think, like, there's this whole underground of entertainers and artists that kept quiet, laid low, didn't want to take it, got the card, pushed on through to tour and stuff. And they have to live with that now, But I think, like, as you were asking me earlier about people's appetite for this sort of new, sort of honest artistry to come back into music, I think, like, integrity has a lot to do with it. Honesty and integrity from the artists themselves. And so with like guys like Pete's in a new band now with Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Stones called The Defiant, which I'm really excited about, because it's like a super group of rock punkers that actually stood up to the man over the last 3 years. And that's really exciting to me, because you can feel that energy through their music. Then you can't feel that through what's mainstream right now. It just feels so empty and just like fluff, mind-numbing fluff, that's just there to turn you into a degenerate or something. But yeah.
It seems like the positivity has been removed out of the Hollywood version of the music industry. But there's a demand for it. There's a demand for positivity. There's a demand for sort of outrage music. Obviously we saw Oliver Anthony on Rogan, and you listen to his conversation, you go, oh, that's a reasonable guy. That's not a political zealot or anything. That guy's like everybody else, except that he's, all of a sudden he became like a huge star. Do you think you've been traveling around internationally, all around the world? Bigger than ever, the appetite for the truth, for honesty, for positivity and a message? Are you feeling that?
Yeah, I think it's hard sometimes. We get lost online or maybe just in our own little communities, and we think I meet some people that feel alone in their communities, and then they'll travel to an event or something, and there'll be so many people there. But like for me to leave Texas and to I went to Austria last year, and went to the UK, like I said, last month. When you go to these events and you realize it is worldwide and you can meet people you've never met before, maybe there's a little bit of a language barrier there, but you can still communicate because you're both on the same mission together. That is like the most beautiful thing. And the greatest silver lining of this entire moment in history is that we are all finding each other, and working with each other. So whether you're just whether you're a musician or you're a teacher or just a community member, like we're all working towards something together. So that's really fantastic to see. And I think, the appetite for honesty and integrity, like I said, especially in art, is very much there. I think that's very much apparent with Oliver Anthony's video. As soon as that took hold and snowballed online, people just consumed it because it that's how thirsty they are for it. So it's incredible to see that, and hopefully it has whet the appetites for people to seek that out, because there are other artists. I was making a list the other day of just all the other artists that have spoken out, and you think that it's probably just a handful of guys, and technically it kind of is, but the more I was making that list, it kept kind of getting longer and longer, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a good chunk of us across many different genres, which is another really exciting thing, because it's not just rap artists, it's not just the acoustic singer-songwriters. There's DJs, and then of course we have like comedians in the arts, and it's just incredible to see that.
Who was the guy that was with Bryson Gray at the he had the Astros jersey on, face tattoos, and he was doing the song with him?
I can't remember his name.
I went through that like red carpet line where you do like the interviews, the step and repeat, and where you go through, and they were right in front of me, and I was like, I don't know who that guy is, but he looks like important. You know what I mean? Part of it was like the face tattoos and the bling and everything. I was like, damn, I've never seen this guy, but he's got to be somebody, right? And so
he's serious.
I was impressed with like the genre too. I had lunch, or I had breakfast with Nick Natelli, because we were staying at the same hotel, and he gets out there and he's same thing. He's like a big dude, he looks at you, go out there and you think, oh, he's kind of a rapper. He's got a red, white, and blue cowboy hat on and everything. Yeah. And I'm saying, whoa, there is this whole sort of like avenue of music that I hadn't even really considered before, which is like patriotic rap rock with these guys that kind of look like rappers, but they're not talking about bitches and hoes. They're talking about bringing back rights and all this stuff. And I'm going, whoa, this is like, that's a whole new genre that is starting to pick up. See, obviously we have all the InfoWars guys there in the crowd, and they're sort of elevating this voice. But did you ever think you would see a day? I grew up in the 90s. It's NWA, Ice Cube and all that stuff. And now it's like, now you got guys that are talking about like going out and instead of snatching chains, it's like snatching your freedom back from people, man. It is a wild pivot. Did you ever think you'd see this in the rap industry?
No, it's interesting because it almost makes sense when you really think about it, as you were telling me about it. Because growing up in the 80s and 90s, as like you look back on the grunge era and you think like that was, it was marketed to us when we were younger as something cool, and that's what was in and trendy, and these guys were screaming out their emotions that any teenager could resonate with. But it didn't. There was something still missing there that I think that this artistry is sort of bringing in, and I think that has to do with patriotism and faith in God, and that really replenishes the soul. When you get lost in a lot of 80s 90s pop culture, it really is you start to sort of really recognize the degeneracy in all of it, and what was happening back then. And then you start to sort of realize, oh, we really are programmed, through every little piece of pop culture. That's not to say you can't enjoy it, because I certainly grew up in that time and I love a lot of that stuff. Even still, it's hard to let it go. But it makes me really excited for the future, because like Bryson Gray is awesome. He's like the most legit Christian you'll ever meet. And he's like, it is funny to see that, though, that these guys can sing about freedom. They can rap about God and faith, and they'll get flack for it. Whereas you see in the mainstream pipeline songs like WAP and these terrible songs like Lil Nas, like you mentioned, lap dancing with the devil in his music video. I mean, these videos have hundreds of millions of views on YouTube, and they're just up there for any kid to see. Meanwhile, their videos are getting flagged. My videos are getting flagged. It's crazy, but we're making that turn, I think.
I feel it. It certainly does. And now you're not going to get everybody every time. Obviously, I lived in LA for a long time. I understand. I didn't work in the music industry, but I understand. It's a bit of a bubble. If you can make those people happy, they can make you a star. But really, do you want to be a star? Because there's a price that comes with all that. When you were growing up, who were your musical inspirations? And were they just musical inspirations, or did you like their music, the way they looked, like the message? Was it all of that, or like what got you sort of into, what got you into music?
Yeah, I was always into songwriters, and so I grew up listening to the Beatles and Billy Joel. And when I got older, like once John Mayer came around, I was like, right in high school, I was like, oh, I want to be John Mayer. I want to be the guy with the acoustic guitar that wins girls over.
Right.
But no, for the most part, a lot of the music that influenced me growing up was like music from the 50s and 60s. I had a fifth grade teacher that used to put on oldies radio while we were in class, and it exposed me to a lot of music that I wouldn't have heard otherwise, because all the other kids were listening to like Nirvana and stuff. So I got really into the classics of rock and roll, and so that's the kind of why it kind of hit me, coming around to this era and time, going like, where's all my guys? Where are my Bob Dylans and stuff? And that stuff was influential on me, but it wasn't the whole package. I always sat on the outside of the rock and roll lifestyle, which I think at saved me. I look back now and I'm like, I was never going to be a sex, drugs, and rock and roll guy. I was going to be just a clean cut guy that ended up with a family, and took care of his kids. But it ended up being that staying that course somehow, with the way the world has worked out, that is the most rock and roll thing you can be right now.
Yeah.
It's just a straight white guy with a family,
Yeah.
that sings "God Help Us All." It's funny that would be the thing that makes me the most rebellious in my life.
I remember when I was growing, like when I was in college or anything, it was like Ice-T, his Cop Killer band. I remember it was like, and 2 Live Crew, parental explicit lyrics, and they stamp it on the thing and they're burning them and steamrolling them, albums at Tower Records and everything. And I'm watching all this and I'm going, wow, this is like sticking your middle finger up to the music industry. And then I realized, no, it's not. The music industry loves this stuff. They're profiting like crazy over the Two Live Crew. The Two Live Crew is going to sell a couple million extra albums just because of the controversy and all this stuff. And it seems like, I would think that for somebody that's coming out, trying to stand out, it's like, well, what am I going to be? What's my niche? What's my gimmick? What's my thing that I'm going to be known for? And how crazy, like you said, how crazy that in the end, the thing that your quote gimmick is that you're not a degenerate scumbag. And that somehow that is like, where have you been? We've been looking for you, man. Like we just got done giving Lil Nas X just got done giving Sam Smith a lap dance, with the devil, throwing money at him. And meanwhile, this is really the music. This is really the attitude. This is really the message that actually resonates and connects. That stuff feels so artificial to me and so fake and so manufactured and so, like they've got a clipboard and they're going, well, Satanism, check. Crappy music, check.
Right.
Naked bitches, check. Like, oh, we gotta have the right number of how many gold chains do we have? It like feels very formulaic and stupid.
Yeah.
And then here comes the good guy rock stars. That have been demonized over the last couple years, and I feel like you guys are on the come up. Like this is a direction that music has headed. Do you even need Hollywood?
No, not at all. I mean, like I said, I've been independent my entire career, so like I ended up having a lot of those major label conversations about 2008, I think, and ultimately, at that time I was touring the country on my own. I had my CDs distributed in Walmart stores, which I had accomplished on my own. I was doing all this stuff. So the arc of my career has been, the tail end of the mainstream traditional music industry turning into this great era for independent artists, right? You're seeing it with like Tom McDonald, who's dominated Billboard charts and stuff like that. That has been mastered at this point. All the tools are in front of us. Now you're seeing the tail end of Hollywood and this mainstream entertainment thing. And one of the great things about why I think, artists like myself or Bryson Gray or any of the other guys that have been speaking out is that we're not tethered to anything. We don't have these managers and contracts and big labels. So we are actually saying what we mean. And, like you say, when it's formulaic, I think that it kind of makes sense. And I don't know if I finished this thought earlier, but if you look back over the last 60 years of music and you see how, let's just go with Elvis and how like, oh, he's shaking his hips on TV, right? That's dangerous. We can't let the kids see that. Then it progresses into longer hair, right? Well, the boys are growing their hair out long now. And it just incrementally kept pushing and pushing to the point to where, oh, Lil Nas X is lap dancing with the devil. And, they just kept pushing it over the decades further and further along to the point to where it no longer resonates anymore because and the generation I think that's coming up is going to do the opposite of whatever their parents grew up with anyway. So if we did grow up with, a lot of the 80s and 90s rap or grunge and stuff, and we kind of have that mentality of whatever it was that it taught us at that time, our kids will probably want to do the opposite of it anyways, which I think is going to be this more faith-based, freedom-minded thing. So hopefully we are at the beginning of that, because then, I've said since all this began that what keeps me optimistic and encouraged in this moment is that on the other side of this, whenever that is, it's going to be like the greatest time to be alive. It's going to be the most fulfilling and cleanest and coolest and most relaxed time to be alive. So, and I think art has a lot to do with that, with getting us there.
Well, can we talk a little bit about the Maui concert that you're doing? Because you're doing with Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So we just did that a few nights ago as an online benefit. And it was organized by a Global Health Project, which was the president of it is my friend Dr. Kat Lindley. And they wanted to raise some money to help out the victims in Hawaii because they, obviously the government isn't doing anything to help them. Then you have Oprah Winfrey coming along with her billions of dollars asking people to donate. So, but this actually, we did an online concert the other night with, it was me, Joseph Arthur hosted it, my friends from Faithless Town. Eric Clapton, he recorded something for the benefit and they played it, and that was just really cool of him. So yes, I technically got to do a gig with Eric Clapton, which is really, really something special. But yeah, it's great for him to take charge and do those sort of things and devote his time to helping out these situations. But what was funny about doing that benefit was being questioned, like people see Eric Clapton and they see these other 6 indie artists, and then we're all lumped into this, and I understand why people are doing this, but people are, they get skeptical. They go, where's this money going? It never gets to the people. And this really was going to the people. This was going through a mission that was out there that's already been helping them out and stuff. But we got catapulted into this Oprah Winfrey level elite class where they're like, why aren't you giving your money? And it's like, I'm not Oprah. Thank you.
Flattered that you would think I'm just hemorrhaging cash here, but it's really not the case. That's funny, man. But even just to have any sort of association with Eric Clapton,
sure.
that was a guy that came out. Yeah, he started speaking out early on about that, saying, listen, didn't he take the vaccine and say, I've had some massive side effects from this, and I'm not really comfortable. Yeah. What has his stance been over the last 3 years on this whole thing?
Well, it seems like, he took it, and he did an interview that got passed around talking about his experience and how it affected his playing and his hands. I think he said he had some pains in it and stuff. And immediately, he got all that backlash from it. And not only did he get backlash as far as being labeled a conspiracy theorist, or an anti-vaxxer, but like Rolling Stone also caked over this racist trope over it. Like they trudged up some story from like over 50 years ago where he said something, and like I think that they used Clapton as an example to set an example for the rest of the entertainment community. But I can't speak for Eric, but I think it's really, I think it's great what he's done as far as speaking out and standing his ground. And Van Morrison too, if you listen to the last couple albums he's put out, he's very direct with his lyrics, and has been saying, I was surprised he hasn't really been brought up as much, but he's been very
what's he been saying? I love Van Morrison. I didn't. Yeah. I remember some buddy of mine who goes to a lot of concerts. He said, I went to Van Morrison last night. This was a couple years ago. I go, how was he? He goes, He was very angry. And I was like, really? And he goes, because he was just angry the whole concert. I was like, oh, interesting. Yeah. So what's he been saying about this?
He's got a couple albums that he put out. I think one of them's called "What's It Gonna Take," or something like that. And it was, a lot of the songs were themed around the controlled COVID narrative that was going. Is his response? I mean, I remember when I was listening to it, he was calling out, I think, guys like Klaus Schwab by name in his songs and stuff like that. And Zuckerberg, he had another album called My Latest Record Project that was 2 discs with a lot of really great stuff on there. There's a song called "Why Are You on Facebook" on there. That's one of my favorites. And it's great. Yeah. So it's surprising. I think the tactic is if you speak out in an interview or something starts taking off, then mainstream news or like guys like Rolling Stone will try to set an example out of you. But if you like Van Morrison's case, I think he put out an album and they would rather just ignore it and not call attention to it or something like that. So that's kind of what I've experienced is like, when I started speaking out little by little, you get these little attacks where they try not to make a big deal out of it. But like quietly one day, I'm just gone from Wikipedia and they deleted the whole 5 Times August page, and
no way.
And it's like, really? Like, you're going to delete my little page on Wikipedia.
That's how you know you've made it too. Also, is kind of that. I'm curious though, because I saw on Rogan maybe a year ago Jan Winter from Rolling Stone on there. What a disappointment Rolling Stone has turned out to be as a magazine in general, and Jan Winter in particular. He's turned into quite an authoritarian. Now, I never had any sort of aspirations of winding up on the cover of Rolling Stone. I have a buddy who did, who wound up on the cover of Rolling Stone. He was probably very, very thrilled with that. As somebody that is a musician, though, growing up, my assumption is that as a maybe not from an ego trip standpoint, but as maybe a validation of the music standpoint, hey, it'd be nice to be on the cover of Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
A lot of people in our positions don't feel that way anymore, right? Have you been super disappointed with what that magazine that was held out in the 60s as being sort of like a culturally relevant, like we're going to kind of fight back and fuck the machine, and we're a Rolling Stone, we're musicians, we do whatever we want. And to watch them become the machine, to me, has been extremely disappointing. What's your take on Rolling Stone?
Yeah. Well, that's the first line of that song. Actually, I said in "Ain't No Rock and Roll." It's well, there ain't no rock and roll ever since they sold out Rolling Stone, and yeah, that's one of those things. I think you have these little placeholders of like, markers that you see in your future when you're starting out. I'm going to have my radio hit and my major label deal, and I'm going to be on the cover of Rolling Stone, and I'm going to get my Grammy, and all those things. To me, they don't mean anything anymore. In fact, my friend Dickie Barrett, he wrote me the other day because the Defiant released their new single, and Rolling Stone reached out to him and said, we'd like to interview you about this. He texted me and goes, should I do it? And I was like, I don't know. If you do it, you better record yourself, on your end. And he goes, I don't think I'm going to do it. And he goes, did you ever think we'd see the day where we would turn down a Rolling Stone interview? That's where we're at. That's the conversation on this side. And it's the same thing with the Grammys. That was sort of my personal marker, was like, one day I want to get a Grammy. And I did a kids album a few years ago. And I submitted it for the Grammy, the children's category. And I had a weird experience with it where somebody turned it into a woke moment where all of the nominees were white guys with acoustic guitars, and it wasn't right. So 3 of the nominees pulled out, and they said, we're going to give them to somebody else who deserves it. And it's like, you just went through the entire process to get nominated. There's a whole process you have to go through. So these guys went through it, they get the actual nomination, and then they pulled out of it. Just to make a moment out of it and say, we need to give it to a person. They'll say person of color and whatever. Yeah, and I became a voting member of the Grammys. So by the time I got that little envelope in the mail that says, you're now a member of the Grammys, I didn't even care about it. That alone would have been cool enough for me to be like, oh, cool, I'm a voting member. I contribute to my music community, but right. I it's like almost trash at that point, because you're just like, whatever.
Did you win for the kids book?
No. I didn't get the actual nomination. I submitted for it all, and then I didn't get there. But it was disheartening to go through the process and see how it goes. Then they announced the 5 actual nominees that you see on TV, and 3 of them decide, hey, we don't deserve it. Granted, I will say this: they already had already won in the past, so I don't think that it mattered much to them. It was sort of like they had Grammy privilege, I would call it, where right, I've already won, but who should win? Let me make a stance here. You know what I mean?
You better check your Grammy privilege.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the whole thing. The whole entertainment industry is very much, it's always who you know, and it's just a big facade, and it's who's scratching who's back, and you learn that over time. And the great thing I like about this new community of artists is that we're all working together, collaborating, supporting one another. It doesn't matter what genre or whatever. it's just a great community. It's like when I reached out to Pete about playing on the new track, I was like, hey, would you want to do this? And like, there wasn't any back and forth. He was just like, yeah, sure, I'd love to, and that's an amazing thing.
Not like, call my manager at CAA and we'll set it up.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, let me think about it. Let me reach out to my suits.
How are we going to split the publishing?
Yeah, exactly.
So what I wonder, this is sort of a small thing. I mean, maybe it feels like a small thing, but we're, we come out of this era where there was a record store, where you could physically go to a record store. And in my case, I remember when I was in high school, there was a Rhino Records that was down the street, not too far, and they had all of the obscure stuff. Like if you want it, like you go to the normal record store, you can get all the top 40 stuff, but you go to the obscure one and you're going to find like B-sides at the Smiths and, Cure stuff that nobody's ever heard and all this stuff. You think that, how do we quantify the loss of that record store culture, where you go there and you don't even know what you want necessarily, but you kind of feel your way out? And I'll be honest, maybe an album cover influences you. Oh my God, like, that's so cool. I remember like when I didn't like Iron Maiden. I mean, I didn't really care. I was indifferent to Iron Maiden, but it's like their album covers are amazing, and they'd wind up on t-shirts and everything. And that's gone now, like, for better or for worse. And I know I sound like the old guy yelling, "Get off my grass," but like, it's all digital now. And it feels like there is no community record store. You think that, does that matter? I mean, like, I wonder how that impacts kids these days that don't really know, like they'll never have that experience that we had.
Well, I'll say this much. So record shopping is, that's my one thing that I do in my spare time. It's my one thing I've always, if I've got a chance to go to a record store, like all down here is records that you can't see. I've got a wall of CDs back there, and I still have cassette tapes, and I love the physical format. And my oldest son actually loves to go shopping with me too. He's 11 years old. And I think that there'll be actually, and also my nephew texted me yesterday saying he's getting into CDs. So, I think that experience of music, we have a generation that's been thumbing through songs or just watching things, but to actually hold it and experience it. I mean, my last album that I just put out, Silent War, is on record. It's on CD, and I actually did a limited edition cassette tape of it. But
I heard about that. I saw somebody on Twitter was telling me like, I bought the cassette.
Right.
It's like,
and I think that's so cool because like, it's just the experience of having our things again. I think that there is a market, I think, that's going to come back around for it. I think it's happening right now. Walmart is selling records again, which is interesting to see. When the biggest retail chain in the country has records in it, that tells you there's a market for it. But I think with like the artists in our movement too, it's especially important because I think people on our side of the aisle are so awake to where we're heading, which is this digital dystopian world where you own nothing and you'll be happy. So like, I like encouraging people to say, hey, look, like digital is great. It's very convenient. You don't have to have a bunch of stuff, filling up your walls or whatever, but own your things again, because you're really just renting it. And I think that we're going to sort of find people falling back into holding a book again, owning the movies, right? Your favorite movies, and putting them in on a DVD or Blu-ray or even a VHS tape for that matter, because it's a whole other experience and it's yours and nobody can take it from you or re-edit it and say, hey, this is the version you're going to watch now. So I think it's really important to remind people of that. I think about it a lot with the story of when I was in church one time. I saw one guy with an old tattered Bible, and then on the other side it was the guy with an iPad Bible. And I thought, that guy's Bible with the old tattered, it's got markings in it, that was probably his grandfather's, and it's got notes in it and little handwritten things in it, and it tells a story. We're not going to be handing down iPhones, and we're not going to be handing down laptops to the next generation. It's going to have to be actual things. So I think that experiences like that are going to come back around because there's a whole generation that hasn't had it and it's new to them.
I'll tell you something. I'll give you some good news on that front. Something that I was kind of caught off guard when I started writing books. I've written 3 books now. I have found, and I can tell you because I get the stats on it, that the paperback outsells the Kindle version 7-1.
Wow.
So a lot of people are interested in having that tangible thing. Maybe they feel like, it's easier for me. I can just kind of pull it out wherever, and I don't need the internet, and I don't need my phone or a tablet or whatever. But there's also a lot of people that say, I just like books better.
Yeah.
I like to be able to have them and keep them. I'm wondering because growing up, this current generation had the ability to go to iTunes and buy one song, to pull a song out of an album. And that, I'm not even a musician, and that feels blasphemous to me. You know what I mean? The idea of the album, the order in which the songs appear in now I have chapters, and I know I want this chapter here, and I want to move this chapter there. And there's a flow, and it's intentional on my part. There's a flow and a rhythm, and I want it to get there. When you are making an album, when you've got a collection of a dozen songs, and they're going on the album, what is your thought process in terms of the order in which they appear? Does it just light up in your head and you go, this is first, this one's second, this one's, or do you know right away? Or is it something that you just kind of have to feel out over the course of finishing up the album?
Well, it used to be that way. You'd have a batch of songs and you'd be like, how do I want to start this album? I want to start it with a banger or whatever, get it going. And then you got to have your little rolling hills of emotion throughout it. But with this last album, with the Silent War album, actually, it ended up being, what happened was I ended up writing a concept album in real time over a year and a half, because the Silent War album is the collection of singles that I put out since the beginning of speaking out through the COVID era. And when I was making the album, I thought, how do I want to, order these songs? And what I ended up doing was just putting them in the order that I wrote and released them, because that's the story right there of what we all experienced. And so, when you put that album on, you can sort of hear that story. And it ends on a song called Lions that I think was sort of like the end of chapter 1 of Silent War. I feel like what I'm doing now is starting chapter 2. And I love that about, putting on an album, is just putting it on and listening to it. But I think, this generation got really used to playlists and everything being customized. And I don't have to buy a whole CD or a whole album. I can just take that one song. And I think we'll get back to those sort of things, because like I said, it's just different. It's just a different experience that this generation hasn't had, that, and maybe a lot of the older generation might have even forgotten about. I got my mom a record player, actually, because that's what we had growing up. And I think that, it's nostalgic for an older generation that grew up with it, and it's brand new for our kids. And it's one thing to sit there and tap on a song and then listen to it. It's another to pull a record out and see the grooves and feel it and place it and put the needle on there, or even a cassette tape, pushing that clunky button and, the play button and rewinding it. And there's just a lot of fun little things there that you don't get in the digital world. And that, I love that stuff.
I stayed at a hotel recently, a year ago, in Fort Collins, Colorado. And when I got into the room, there's a record player in there. And there's a note that says, whatever albums you want, just come down to the lobby. You can borrow them. And so I was like, so I went down, and there was like a library that was there, like a cool, like old school library, but it wasn't books. It was all albums. And they're like, just go borrow whatever, so I grabbed a Cat Stevens album, and I grabbed this, and I thought, this is the greatest thing. I'm just going to go. I had no intention of listening to any of it. Any of these songs until I saw that record player. And then all of a sudden it was the only thing I could do. I was like, I'm going immediately, and I'm going to listen to records while I get ready today, do all that stuff. It was such a simple thing. And I was there with my wife, and we kind of joked that we had like a vision in our head of somebody who was like 19 walking in going, what is this thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember I was standing in line at a music store a few years ago, and there was this kid talking to his sister, and his sister was buying a record player, and the kid, he was probably 8 or 9. He was like, "So you put this on there, and then it plays." He's like working out how a record player works in his head because he couldn't imagine it, and it was brand new. But that's the whole experience. Like, you got to remember that, like, music has turned into a background noise. That's why so much of it is fluff and meaningless nowadays. It's, you put it on your phone and you just let it play. But when like you at the hotel, you turned it into an experience. All of a sudden it was an experience because you could sit there and hold it and pick out what you wanted. And, it became a moment, like watching a movie where you sit down and you watch a movie. Well, that's what we used to do, is sit down and you'd listen to a song. You get lost in your headphones. So yeah, I think that's, with, to curtail that into what we're talking about here with like the other artists, is that there is meaning into this art that makes you want to listen to it now, that resonates with us and what we're all experiencing. So, I think that a big revival is coming on the arts front with, just in general. So
it feels like it. It feels like whenever you have something that goes so far one direction, then inevitably it whipsaws back the other way. And you get a bunch of people that say, I just want to get as far away from that as I can. Where are the good people? Where's the good music? Give me some good music. Give me something positive. Give me something that's not satanic or manufactured or being recorded at a certain megahertz to make it
right.
You know what I mean? Like all this stuff. Give me the old stuff. I want to be able to put on a Pink Floyd album, listen to it from start to finish all the way. And maybe Pink Floyd's not the best because they've turned into authoritarian retards, but you know what I mean? Put on one of those old albums you can listen to and go, oh yeah, man, it kind of takes you away to this other place. What a talented, I'm so impressed with people like you, musicians that have the ability to sit down and you understand that language. I understand football. I don't understand music though. I mean, I love it and I love to go to concerts and do all that stuff, but I don't understand how it all works. So to me, it's just a privilege to be able to watch you guys do it. I think we are on the verge of a golden era of music that these people are going to wish. They're going to wish they'd never pivoted so hard towards this this satanic, lunacy, because what they're doing is they're fertilizing this new type of music that's coming out. And guys like you are at the forefront of it. Man, where are you going to be for the tail end of this year? Are you going out on tour? What do you have planned, and what's the best place for people to buy your work, support your stuff, and to listen to your music and get into all your things?
Yeah, you can check out 5timesaugust.com and you can order the records and the CDs and the cassette tapes there. And follow me on Twitter and all the other social media websites at 5timesaugust. But yeah, I got a new single coming out, like I said, probably in the next month, and kind of just coasting the rest of the year. I don't know how much more traveling I'll be doing. I've been traveling quite a bit. And I want to make sure I'm here at home and taking care of the family and stuff. But I think next year, I might end up doing a songwriter tour. Joseph and I are talking with our friend Peter Conway, who's over in the UK. And we had a great time doing a couple shows together when we were over there. So we thought about maybe doing that here, or maybe going back to the UK. I'm not sure, but we're figuring it out. We've all sort of been cooped up, and I think a lot of us in this space have been playing events, but we haven't really been doing tours as much. But I think that's the next gradual, the next step of things, is to really get out there and now that we've all sort of done the events and the protests and the rallies, it's kind of, let's make this our own actual thing now. Let's take it on the road and do shows and do full sets and stuff. So it's exciting.
I think I'm excited, and I don't even have any part in it. I know that there's an appetite for this. There's a change coming, and I really appreciate you holding these guys accountable It's so fun to watch. I wish you didn't have to. I wish we didn't have to do any of this. I wish you didn't have to write that album, because to write that album means that a lot of people had to go through some nonsense and some suffering and some pain and misery and all of that. I wish none of this stuff ever happened, but we can't change it. I guess the one thing we can do is make sure that we bring some positivity and brighten people's day. That's Brad, everybody, from 5 Times August. Go support his work. Go catch him when he's out on the road. If you like this episode, you can take the additional step right now of sharing it with your friends and family. You can follow me on Twitter at Macroaggressions, the website, the octopus of globalcontrol.com. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you again soon.